All right, let's talk about something that most people don't think about until it's already happening. And that is the relationship between retirement and dementia. Because when people imagine retirement, they usually picture freedom, sleeping a little later, traveling, spending time with family, finally relaxing after decades of work. And for many people, that's exactly what retirement becomes. But for some people, something unexpected starts to happen. Their memory begins to slip. Their mind doesn't feel as sharp as it used to. They start forgetting little things, names, appointments, where they left their keys. And sometimes those small changes raise a scary question. Does retirement increase the risk of dementia? Or could retirement actually protect your brain? Now, this is one of those topics where the answer isn't simple, because retirement itself isn't the problem, but what people do after retirement can make a huge difference in how the brain ages. And over the years, researchers have looked closely at this. Some studies show that people who completely stop challenging their minds after leaving work may experience faster cognitive decline. But other studies show that people who stay active, curious, and socially engaged can actually keep their brains healthy for many years. So retirement can either become a risk or a powerful protection, and the difference often comes down to lifestyle. Let me explain what I mean. When most people are working, their brains are constantly active whether they realize it or not. They solve problems, they make decisions, they interact with coworkers, they plan projects, they remember schedules. Even simple tasks like commuting, answering emails, or managing responsibilities keep the brain engaged. It's a daily workout for your mind. But when someone suddenly retires, especially after decades of routine, that structure disappears overnight. And for some people, their mental stimulation disappears with it. Now imagine a person who wakes up after retirement with no real plan. They watch television most of the day, they stop learning new things, their social circle slowly shrinks because they're no longer seeing coworkers every day. Days start blending together. Weeks pass with very little mental challenge. Over time, the brain may begin to slow down, because just like muscles in your body, the brain needs activity to stay strong. And this is where the connection with dementia becomes interesting. Dementia, including conditions like Alzheimer's disease, often develops gradually over many years. It's not something that suddenly appears overnight. And scientists believe that keeping the brain active helps build what they call cognitive reserve. Think of cognitive reserve like extra strength in your brain. The more you challenge your mind through learning, socializing, problem solving, and staying curious, the more resilience your brain develops. So, if age-related changes happen later in life, your brain is better prepared to handle them. But here's the important part. Retirement itself doesn't destroy cognitive reserve. What matters is how someone spends their time afterward. Some retirees become more mentally active than they ever were during their working years. They start reading more. They learn new skills. They volunteer. They travel. They join clubs or community groups. They take online classes. In those cases, retirement can actually improve brain health rather than harm it. I remember hearing about a man who retired after 40 years working as an accountant. Very structured job, lots of numbers, lots of routine. When he retired, he decided he wanted to learn something completely different. So, at 65 years old, he started learning a new language. At first, it was slow and frustrating. He joked that his brain felt rusty. But after a few months, something interesting happened. He said he felt mentally sharper than he had in years. His memory improved, his confidence improved, and he eventually started traveling to practice that language with people from different cultures. Retirement didn't shrink his world, it expanded it. Now, on the other hand, I've also seen people retire and slowly withdraw from activities they once enjoyed. They lose their daily purpose. And that loss of purpose can affect more than just the brain. It can affect emotional health, motivation, and social connection. Loneliness is actually one of the biggest hidden risks for cognitive decline in older adults. Humans are social creatures. Conversations challenge the brain. Sharing stories stimulate memory. Laughing with friends triggers emotional engagement that keeps the mind alive. When someone retires and suddenly spends long periods alone, the brain may receive less stimulation than it's used to. Over time, that lack of interaction can contribute to cognitive decline. It doesn't mean retirement caused dementia, but the lifestyle changes surrounding retirement might play a role. Another interesting factor is stress. Now, this one surprises a lot of people. Many jobs are stressful. Deadlines, responsibilities, long hours. Chronic stress can actually harm brain health over time. High stress levels increase hormones like cortisol, which may affect memory centers in the brain if they stay elevated for years. So for some people, retirement removes that stress. Their blood pressure improves, their sleep improves, their mental health improves, and all of those changes can protect the brain. So you see, retirement is a double-edged sword. It can either reduce harmful stress or reduce healthy mental stimulation. The key is balance. A healthy retirement lifestyle replaces the structure of work with new activities that keep the brain engaged. Let's talk about a few habits that seem to make a big difference. The first is continuous learning. The brain loves novelty. When you learn something new, whether it's playing a musical instrument, studying history, gardening techniques, photography, or even learning how to use new technology, your brain forms new neural connections. These connections strengthen cognitive reserve and help protect against decline. The second habit is social connection. Regular interaction with other people forces the brain to process language, remember information, and respond emotionally. Even simple conversations at a coffee shop or community center can stimulate the brain in ways that passive activities like television simply cannot. The third habit is physical activity. This might sound unrelated, but exercise is one of the most powerful brain-protecting habits scientists have discovered. When you walk, swim, cycle, or do any kind of regular physical activity, blood flow to the brain increases. That improved circulation supports brain cells and encourages the growth of new neural connections. Some studies even suggest that exercise may help slow the progression of cognitive decline. And here's something else many people overlook. Purpose matters. Having a reason to wake up in the morning can dramatically affect mental health and brain health. During working years, purpose often comes from career responsibilities. After retirement, people sometimes have to rediscover that purpose. It could be volunteering, mentoring younger people, helping in community projects, caring for grandchildren, or pursuing meaningful hobbies. People who feel useful and engaged tend to stay mentally sharper. Their brains are constantly processing goals, plans, and interactions. That kind of engagement acts like fuel for the mind. Now, one more thing that researchers have noticed is the timing of retirement. Some studies suggest that retiring extremely early without a plan may increase the risk of cognitive decline. Not because retirement itself is harmful, but because a sudden loss of mental stimulation can catch the brain off guard. On the other hand, people who gradually transition into retirement, perhaps through part-time work or active hobbies, often maintain cognitive health longer. So if you're thinking about retirement, the most important question isn't just when will I stop working? The better question is, what will I start doing? Because retirement isn't the end of mental activity, it's the beginning of a new chapter where you design how your brain will stay active. And I think that shift in mindset is incredibly powerful. Instead of viewing retirement as stepping away from life's challenges, think of it as redirecting those challenges into areas that excite you. Maybe you've always wanted to write. Maybe you want to learn woodworking. Maybe you want to explore your family history or study astronomy. Your brain doesn't care whether the challenge comes from a job or a hobby. It simply benefits from being used. The truth is, dementia is influenced by many factors: genetics, lifestyle, physical health, education, and environment. Retirement is only a small piece of that puzzle, but it's an important piece because it represents a major life transition. And transitions shape habits. Habits shape brain health. Some of the happiest retirees I've ever seen are the ones who stay curious. They ask questions. They try new things even when it feels uncomfortable. They stay connected with friends and family. They move their bodies and exercise their minds. In many ways, they treat retirement not as an ending, but as a reinvention. And that mindset might be one of the most powerful protections against cognitive decline that we have. But there's another side of this conversation that most people never hear about. Because while lifestyle after retirement matters a lot, the type of work someone did before retiring can also influence their dementia risk. Some careers constantly challenge the brain, while others are more repetitive. Some jobs provide strong social networks, while others involve long hours of isolation. And researchers are discovering that these differences may affect how the brain ages after retirement. So in the next part, we're going to talk about something fascinating. We'll look at how different types of jobs may influence dementia risk, why some retirees actually become mentally sharper after leaving work, and the surprising habits that many healthy 90-year-olds have in common. Now, here's something that doesn't get talked about very often, but it's incredibly important when we're discussing the relationship between dementia and retirement, and that is the type of work a person did before they retired. Because not all careers challenge the brain in the same way. Some jobs constantly push people to solve problems, learn new skills, and adapt to change. Other jobs are much more repetitive. You do the same task every day, sometimes for years. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that kind of work, researchers have noticed that the level of mental stimulation throughout someone's career can influence cognitive health later in life. Think about it this way. Imagine two people who both retire at the age of 65. One person spent their career constantly learning, making complex decisions, managing projects, and interacting with different people. The other person spent 40 years performing highly repetitive tasks that required very little variation. When both of those people retire, their brains may be in slightly different starting positions. The first person has been exercising their brain like a muscle for decades. The second person may not have had as many opportunities for that kind of mental challenge. Now, this doesn't mean one person is doomed and the other is protected, far from it, because retirement gives everyone the chance to reshape their lifestyle. Someone who had a repetitive career might suddenly start reading, learning, socializing, and exploring new hobbies in retirement. And in some cases, that new stimulation actually strengthens their brain more than it was during their working years. In fact, there are people who say their minds feel clearer after retirement. And that might sound surprising at first, but when you think about it, it makes sense. During working years, many people operate under constant pressure. Deadlines, responsibilities, financial stress, long hours. That kind of environment can be mentally exhausting. The brain is working hard, but not always in a healthy way. When retirement removes that stress, something interesting can happen. People sleep better, their blood pressure improves, they have time to think more deeply, read more carefully, and engage with ideas at their own pace. Instead of rushing from one task to the next, they start enjoying slower, more thoughtful activities. And that slower pace can actually support cognitive health. I once heard a story about a woman who worked in a very demanding administrative job for over 30 years. Her days were packed with schedules, paperwork, phone calls, and constant interruptions. By the time she retired, she felt mentally drained. She worried that her memory wasn't as good as it used to be. But after retirement, she started doing something she had always wanted to do. She joined a local book club. At first, she was nervous. She hadn't read full novels in years, but slowly she got back into the habit. One book turned into 2, then 3, then dozens. The group discussions forced her to think critically about stories, characters, and ideas. She had conversations with people from different backgrounds, and after about a year, she said something that really stuck with me. She said, "I feel like my brain woke up again." That's the power of mental engagement. Now, another factor that researchers talk about a lot is routine. When people work for decades, their daily routines are very structured. They wake up at the same time, they go to work, they interact with coworkers, they solve problems, they come home and repeat the cycle the next day. That routine provides a kind of built-in stimulation for the brain. But retirement removes that structure almost instantly, and for some people that sudden change can be disorienting. Days become wide open. There's no schedule forcing the brain to stay active, and if someone doesn't intentionally create new routines, their days can slowly become less stimulating. I've seen retirees who thrive because they build simple routines. Maybe they walk every morning. Maybe they meet friends for coffee every Wednesday. Maybe they volunteer twice a week or spend afternoons learning something new online. These routines give the brain something to anticipate, something to prepare for, something to remember. But the retirees who struggle the most often have no routine at all. They wake up whenever they feel like it, they drift through the day without clear goals, and over time that lack of structure can lead to boredom, loneliness, and mental decline. Another interesting piece of this puzzle is identity.
For many people, their job becomes a big part of how they see themselves. When someone asks, "What do you do?" the answer is usually their profession. Teacher, engineer, nurse, business owner, manager, carpenter, doctor.
But when retirement arrives, that identity can suddenly disappear, and that can create a strange emotional gap. Some retirees feel lost at first because they no longer have the role that defined them for decades. And here's why that matters for brain health. Identity is tied to motivation. When people feel like they have a meaningful role in life, they stay engaged. They plan things, they set goals, they interact with others. All of those activities stimulate the brain. But when someone feels like they no longer have a role or purpose, motivation can drop. They may become less active, less social, and less mentally engaged. Over time, that withdrawal can increase the risk of cognitive decline. The good news is that retirement doesn't have to erase identity. It simply gives people the chance to redefine it. Someone who was once a teacher might become a mentor in their community. Someone who worked in business might help younger entrepreneurs. A retired nurse might volunteer in health programs. A retired craftsman might teach woodworking classes. Purpose doesn't disappear after retirement, it just changes form. Now let's talk about something fascinating that scientists have discovered while studying people who live well into their 90s and even past 100 years old. Many of these individuals continue challenging their brains throughout their lives. They read, they tell stories, they learn new things, they stay socially connected, and perhaps most importantly, they remain curious. Curiosity is incredibly powerful for the brain. When you're curious, your brain naturally seeks information. It asks questions. It forms new connections. It stays flexible. That flexibility helps protect against cognitive decline. There's a phrase some researchers use called "use it or lose it." And while that phrase is a bit simplified, the idea behind it is very real. The brain thrives on activity. The more you challenge it in healthy ways, the stronger it becomes. And here's something encouraging. It's never too late to start. Even people who begin new mental activities in their 70s or 80s can strengthen cognitive function. The brain has an amazing ability called neuroplasticity. That simply means the brain can adapt, grow, and form new connections throughout life. So retirement doesn't have to be the beginning of decline. It can actually be the beginning of one of the most mentally enriching stages of life. But it requires intention. It requires choosing activities that challenge the brain, connect you with people, and give you a sense of purpose. If someone spends retirement only sitting back and passively consuming entertainment, the brain may slowly disengage. But if someone uses retirement as a time to explore new interests, strengthen relationships, and stay physically active, their brain can remain vibrant for decades. And that brings us to the most important takeaway from this entire conversation. Dementia is not caused by retirement itself. What matters is the lifestyle that surrounds retirement. If retirement leads to isolation, inactivity, and boredom, it may increase risk. But if retirement leads to curiosity, learning, movement, and connection, it can actually protect the brain. So if you're thinking about retirement, don't just plan your finances, plan your lifestyle. Plan the activities that will keep your mind alive. Plan the people you'll stay connected with. Plan the hobbies that will challenge you. Because the goal of retirement isn't just to stop working. The goal is to keep living fully. And the brain, just like the body, responds beautifully when we give it the right kind of attention. So here's a simple thought to leave you with. The day you retire isn't the day your brain should slow down. It's the day your brain finally has the freedom to explore everything it never had time for before. If you enjoyed this video, there's another one that I think you'll really like waiting for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.